Okay, deep breath. We're diving into something today that feels uh, less like history and more like unlocking some kind of forbidden vault. The sources you've shared are pointing us towards this sealed manuscript, hidden for what, over a century?
That's right. And penned, or, well, dictated, by Helena Blavatsky, one of the most, let's say, fascinating and definitely controversial figures out there.
Right, and this isn't just some dusty old paper, is it? The materials describe it as her final work, maybe her most explosive text.
Exactly. And the security around it. I mean, it sounds extraordinary, almost theatrical, these precautions they took to keep it hidden.
It really does sound like something from an adventure movie, doesn't it? Secret locations, layers of security.
But the treasure isn't gold. It's an idea, a really unsettling one, according to the sources, about the very nature of people.
A claim so fundamental it could genuinely shift how you look at everyone around you. Maybe even yourself.
And that's really our mission here, isn't it, in this deep dive, to unpack the most striking claims in this document and the related materials you gave us.
Yeah, to understand what Blavatsky actually described, and just as importantly, why she, or her followers, felt this knowledge was so dangerous it had to be locked away for 100 years.
Let's jump right in then. The story of the manuscript itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. The origin story is, well, it's pretty incredible. Sources say British India, winter of 1891. She dictated it.
Right. And despite, her hands trembling rheumatism, they say she insisted on pressing the seal herself.
And the seal wasn't just any old wax.
No, no. Black wax, apparently mixed with something she called protection powder. Later analysis, according to these sources, found frankincense and some kind of rare Himalayan mineral in there.
Wow. And the seal itself, 3 words crossed out.
Yes. Vessels without light.
Mm-hmm.
And a very clear instruction attached. Don't disclose this while the world still basically assumes everyone is fully human.
While the world still believes everyone is human. I mean, that phrase alone, it tells you the scale of what she thought was inside.
Absolutely. And the lengths they went to hide it. Teakwood box, right? Locked with 3 different keys.
3 keys? Seriously?
Yeah, held by 3 separate trusted guardians within the Theosophical Society's inner circle. Even just mentioning it existed was forbidden to most members.
That's some serious secrecy. And its journey afterwards.
Just as dramatic. The sources track it going to Paris, archived with this strict no reading for a century clause. It apparently traveled under diplomatic protection.
Diplomatic protection for a manuscript.
I know, right? Changed hands, the sources say 17 times. Private collections, hushed exchanges. Finally ending up, supposedly, at the Musée Guimet in Paris.
And it stayed hidden through wars, upheavals, until 1994.
Exactly. Found completely by accident, the story goes. A restorer at the Guimet working behind a mirror.
Not just any mirror, though.
No, polished obsidian, which, has its own history tied to scrying, divination, protective magic, and different traditions. Adds another layer, doesn't it?
It really does. And the safe it was in.
Yeah.
And how did they even open it?
Well, that's another strange detail. No visible keyhole. The claim is the box only opened when exposed to a specific sequence of light frequencies, discovered totally by chance during renovation work.
Like it was waiting for something, a signal.
Maybe. Or just a very, very specific lock mechanism. The manuscript itself has described 2 yellowed pages, obviously, but made of this unusual Himalayan nettle fiber. Apparently incredibly durable, resistant to decay.
And that dedication at the bottom. To those who walk with eyes but without reflection. Chilling.
Yes, and that phrase, the sources explain, is key. It links to this idea of beings who don't cast a spiritual shadow. Don't leave an energetic imprint on whatever plane Blavatsky was talking about, maybe the Akashic records.
That concept of a cosmic library, right?
And the document had other oddities. The shaky handwriting of the person taking dictation, water spots, these hastily drawn protective symbols in the margins, looking like Tibetan glyphs.
Protective wards against what?
Good question. Maybe psychic intrusion. The restorer even reported feeling this weird, cold, static sensation and smelling ozone, like after a lightning strike.
Okay, you have to wonder, what on earth was written on those pages to warrant all that? What knowledge could possibly be so dangerous?
Well, that brings us right to the heart of it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Here's where it gets really compelling. The big revelation.
The core claim, as the sources describe it, is that there exist functional beings, human in appearance, who have never actually housed a soul.
Vessels without light, soulless ones, empty vessels, those are the terms used.
Those are the terms, yes. And it's important that the sources clarify this isn't about evil or demonic possession in the usual sense. It's described more as an absence, a fundamental lack of that inner spark, that divine light that the tradition assumes a fully ensouled human has.
And the sources connect this to a feeling that maybe some people have experienced, that
Yeah.
sense of emptiness when looking at someone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That inexplicable feeling that something crucial is just missing behind their gaze. The text basically asks, is this just a subjective feeling, or could it be a subtle, maybe untrained perception of what Blavatsky was describing?
And emphasizing they aren't necessarily bad people,
Yeah.
just absent in some fundamental way.
Right. Functional within society, but lacking that deeper inner resonance. That's the idea presented.
So if they look just like us, how did Blavatsky claim you could identify them? Did the manuscript offer, like, a checklist?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The sources say it goes into meticulous detail, almost like she was creating a field guide for classifying this other type of human-like entity.
Okay, like what? What signs?
Physical signs mentioned include blinking at very regular, almost mechanical intervals, regardless of what's going on around them. Pupils dilating mechanically to light, but maybe not in response to emotional cues. Even a slightly cooler body temperature is noted.
Subtle things. What about behavior, emotions?
A described flatness in emotional responses. An inability to genuinely appreciate beauty or art or anything profound unless it's sort of dictated by social convention, like, oh, I'm supposed to find this moving.
Right, going through the motions.
Exactly. And this is a really striking point the sources highlight.
Yeah.
When asked about early childhood memories, they apparently don't recall them in the same way. Instead, Blavatsky observed they would sort of construct a plausible memory. They figure out what a normal person should remember and build a story around that rather than accessing a genuine inner experience.
So they're like highly advanced mimics, reacting, echoing, but without the inner source.
That's the description. Like complex automata, moving through life, very good at learning and reproducing human behaviors they observe in people with souls, but lacking that internal light or authentic feeling driving it.
And the number. You mentioned a number Blavatsky estimated.
Yeah, and this is where it gets, well, honestly staggering. The sources cite her estimation at somewhere between 17% and 23% of the population.
17 to 23%. That's
Yeah.
huge.
It is. And the text supposedly notes they're more common in urban centers, where the mechanical life of big cities and routines can maybe mask their difference more easily.
If that's true. The implications are just massive. They might never feel real compassion, real love.
According to the text, yes. They can become exceptionally skilled at mimicking empathy, performing all the social rituals of caring and concern perfectly. But the source presents it as a performance, not stemming from genuine inner feeling. It's a stark, esoteric claim.
And there was something else. Another key sign mentioned in the manuscript. Something about sleep.
Yes, that's right. Dreams. Or rather, the lack of them. Blavatsky claimed, according to the sources, that these beings do not dream. Or if they report dreams, they're described as without light, without faces, without voices, empty.
And she tried to test this back in the 1890s.
Amazingly, yes. The text describes her using copper and zinc electrodes hooked up to a sensitive galvanometer early biofeedback, really trying to record subtle electrical changes during sleep that might indicate inner activity, dreaming.
What did she conclude?
Her conclusion, as presented in the source, was that in true sleep, the soul journeys, processes things. But those without this spark, they just lie in darkness. They get physical rest, but they don't travel inwardly.
So the dreams they might talk about
Are inventions, she believed. Artificial stories built from what they think they should have dreamt, based on cultural cues or things they've heard. Not real subconscious experiences.
and something about waking up differently.
Yeah, the sources mention a subtle difference lacking that momentary grogginess or disorientation that someone with a soul might feel as they return from the dream world. The manuscript apparently details an experiment in 1890. 5 subjects. 3 showed normal dream-associated patterns. 2 showed this mechanical rest. And those 2, when woken, described fake-sounding borrowed dreams.
Okay, that's fascinating on its own. But the sources connect this to modern science.
They do. They bring up a 2018 documentation from the University of Wisconsin about rare cases of people showing virtually no REM sleep, the stage we link with vivid dreams. And these subjects reported their sleep as just darkness without content.
Which science attributes to a neurological anomaly.
Right. But this source material basically poses the question, what if modern science, without realizing it, was actually observing the very phenomenon Blavatsky described over 100 years ago? It's a provocative thought.
Okay, so beings lacking souls, mimicking behavior, no real dreams, but there was another layer, wasn't there? Something even more Disturbing.
Yes. And this might be one of the most unsettling claims in the whole thing, the idea of energy drain. The sources state these beings are believed to unconsciously draw energy from those who do have souls.
How?
Why? They're described as empty vessels seeking to fill themselves. Not maliciously necessarily, but instinctively pulling that vital energy, that light they lack from others around them.
And you can feel this.
The manuscript apparently describes the sensation. Starting subtly, maybe feeling suddenly cold in your hands or feet, a bit disoriented, forgetting simple words. But with prolonged exposure, the sources warn, it could lead to more severe things. Chronic fatigue, emotional numbness, a state she allegedly called soul sleepiness.
Soul sleepiness. Wow. Are there places where this is more likely to happen?
The sources point to specific environments Blavatsky supposedly warned about. Large hospitals, government buildings, big educational institutions. Places where, in her view, individuals are often treated as units, numbers, rather than unique souls. She called them places where souls are processed.
It sounds a bit like, modern concepts like emotional vampires or energy thieves, burnout, compassion fatigue.
Exactly. The sources make that connection directly, suggesting these contemporary terms might just be untrained, intuitive ways of describing the same energetic dynamic Blavatsky was trying to map out systematically.
Is there any way to know it's happening, like a warning sign from your own body?
The manuscript apparently details that too. A feeling of coolness right in the center of your chest, a slight pressure behind the eyes, or that momentary struggle to recall a simple word you definitely know. These feelings, the text claims, are like your soul's little alarm bell saying its energy is being depleted.
Okay, that's a lot, but it wasn't all doom and gloom, right? Did she offer any solutions? Protection?
Thankfully, yes. The manuscript didn't just diagnose the problem, the sources say it also offered a solution. Blavatsky apparently encoded a ritual for what she called soul fortification.
And this part of the manuscript looked well used.
Apparently so. Fingerprints, worn edges, suggesting people actually practice this. It outlines a daily routine.
What does it involve?
12 minutes at dawn, facing east. And a specific breathing pattern. Inhale for 4 counts, hold the breath for 4 counts, then exhale slowly for 8 counts. 4, 4, 8.
Okay. And while breathing?
You're instructed to visualize an amber light gathering in the center of your chest, then expanding outwards, forming a protective sphere of energy around your whole body.
Amber light. And there was a mantra, too, something decoded.
Yes, written in a cipher that apparently took cryptographers months to crack. The phrase translates roughly to, I remain, but the sources stress it has a deeper Sanskrit meaning like conscious persistence against dissolution, a declaration of the soul's endurance.
And the purpose of all this?
To strengthen the electromagnetic field that supposedly anchors the soul to the body. The sources connect this idea, interestingly, to later concepts in quantum biology about the body's subtle energy fields. And this fortification wasn't a one-and-done thing. It needed refreshing daily, and especially before going into situations where you might encounter these vessels.
Were there other suggestions for keeping your soul vital?
Yes, several. Regular time in nature, especially near flowing water or in sunlight. Engaging in creative expression just for yourself, not for an audience. And making time for regular solitude. Simple things, really, but aimed at nourishing that inner connection.
It's fascinating that she didn't just identify a potential problem, but offered practical steps. But these ideas, they weren't entirely unique to her, were they? The sources mention echoes elsewhere.
That's another really intriguing part. The sources argue that similar concepts, though often hidden or removed from public texts, pop up in other historical traditions.
Like where?
Ancient Vedic scriptures are mentioned, obscure medieval grimoires, with the suggestion that references to similar kinds of beings or energy dynamics were maybe deliberately edited out over time.
Edited out. Why?
Maybe too disturbing, too challenging to establish views. The sources even bring up the Vatican archives, mentioning a supposed 12th century manuscript talking about shells that move as men, apparently sealed by papal decree, very restricted access.
Wow. And connections to famous figures, too. That was surprising.
Right. The sources cite private letters or notes suggesting people like Einstein privately questioned if consciousness was quantized, maybe discrete units, and supposedly destroyed some notes in 47, calling a conclusion too dangerous.
Einstein. Okay, that's unexpected. Who else?
Rudolf Steiner, the founder of anthroposophy. His private papers from 1913 apparently reference HPB's warning about the hollow ones, HPB being Blavatsky. And he reportedly used an identical protective symbol, a complex geometric pattern from the manuscript, in the architecture of the first Gothianum.
Using the symbol in a building, that's commitment to the idea.
And even Carl Jung. The sources link Blavatsky's concept to ideas Jung explored in his Red Book and private letters with the physicist Wolfgang Pauli. Jung apparently wrote about empty people and saw parallels in patients who had a perfect persona function, a flawless social mask, but seemed to lack any individual essence underneath.
So you have these thinkers, scientists, mystics, across different fields and times, seemingly bumping up against a similar strange idea about human consciousness, or the lack thereof.
Exactly. The sources really emphasize the significance of these apparently independent observations converging on a similar theme.
Now, connecting this to the bigger picture, the manuscript supposedly made predictions about our time, the 21st century.
It did, according to the sources. Blavatsky apparently foresaw a significant rise in the prevalence of these beings in our era. She reportedly viewed it as part of the cycle known as the Kali Yuga, an age in some traditions marked by materialism, conflict, and spiritual decline.
So she thought modern life would create more of them, or make it easier for them.
Sort of both. The idea presented is that a heavily materialistic civilization creates disconnected masses. People become highly functional on the surface, but increasingly hollow inside. The conditions for a soul to fully embody or connect become less favorable.
And technology plays a role.
A big one, according to the text. The sources claim she made remarkably accurate predictions about things like mass media, complex computational systems, even a basic concept of the internet. She saw these as tools that would tend to externalize human consciousness, pull our focus outward, and weaken that connection to the inner soul.
Wow, that's eerily specific for the 1890s.
It is. And the argument in the text goes further, that society itself would increasingly reward those without that deep inner life. Their lack of messy feelings, existential angst, or deep ethical questioning would actually become an advantage in systems built for efficiency, consumption, and surface appearances.
That hits a bit close to home, doesn't it? Burnout, detachment, social media personas.
The source is absolutely connected to those things. Widespread burnout, emotional detachment becoming normalized, people crafting elaborate online identities for external validation, even the rise of sort of simulated spiritual experiences that offer temporary relief but don't fundamentally change anything inside. The passage, as described, reads like a premonition.
Okay. Just when I think we've covered the strangest parts. There was one more thing mentioned right at the end.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The mimics. A final, perhaps even more disturbing possibility hinted at in the last paragraphs.
Mimics, as in different from the empty vessels.
Potentially. The text apparently suggests there might be a second type, even more challenging to identify. Beings who are not just empty, but have learned to perfectly mimic genuine feelings, depth, and soulfulness.
How?
The source uses the analogy of a mirage they learn to project the appearance of inner life as a desert mirage simulates water, making them almost impossible to spot without some kind of highly developed inner sense or specific training. It's presented as being right on the edge of what's even knowable.
Right. So where does that leave us? We've gone through this really extraordinary and, deeply unsettling source material. From the hidden manuscript itself, the claims about soulless beings, how to spot them, protect yourself energetically, the historical echoes, the modern predictions.
It's a lot to take in. And it's crucial, as you said, to remember this is all coming from these specific sources you provided. The knowledge contained within Blavatsky's alleged manuscript and the related interpretations.
And the sources themselves apparently frame it not as something to cause fear, but maybe compassion. Seeing these beings within that framework as expressions of cosmic necessity.
As the perspective presented, yes. A challenging one, but aimed at understanding rather than judgment.
It definitely gives you a lot to think about. If even considering this possibility changes how you view the world, what does that then mean for how you recognize the vitality, the light within yourself?
That's a powerful question. How does understanding this potential for energy drain, as described in these texts, influence the choices you make? Your relationships, where you spend your time, what activities you pursue.
Does this kind of knowledge make you want to just pull back, protect yourself, or does it change how you engage, maybe make you more intentional about seeking out connections and environments that genuinely nourish your own inner spark?
Yeah, something to definitely mull over as you continue your own exploration.